The dust cloud appeared on the horizon just after dawn, and Sarah McKenzie shaded her eyes against the rising sun to watch the lone rider approach her modest ranch, with something massive trailing behind him on a lead rope. She had been widowed for 3 years now, running this small horse operation outside of Tombstone, Arizona territory. In the summer of 1882, with nothing but her own 2 hands and a stubborn refusal to sell out to the neighboring cattle barons who wanted her water rights. At 24 years old, she had learned to shoe horses, mend fences, and shoot straight enough to discourage both coyotes and the occasional drifter with bad intentions. Her late husband Thomas had taught her everything about horses before a rattlesnake spooked his mount and broke his neck in a fall, leaving her alone with 6 horses, 40 acres, and a mortgage she paid by boarding and training horses for miners, ranchers, and anyone else who needed temporary care for their animals. The rider drew closer, and Sarah could see he was tall in the saddle, wearing a black hat pulled low and a long duster coat despite the heat that would climb past 90 degrees by midday. But what truly caught her attention was the horse he led, a magnificent black stallion that moved like poetry, all rippling muscle and arched neck, clearly a prize animal worth more than her entire property. The stallion's coat gleamed like polished onyx in the early light, and even from a distance, she could see the intelligence and fire in the way he carried himself. She walked out from the barn to meet them at the fence line, wiping her hands on her work trousers. Her neighbors had long since stopped whispering about a widow woman who wore pants and did her own ranch work. She had bigger concerns than propriety. The rider dismounted with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle. When he removed his hat, Sarah found herself looking at a man perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was weathered by sun and wind but handsome in a rough-hewn way, with a strong jaw shadowed by a few days of beard growth. There was something about the set of his shoulders that suggested both strength and weariness, as if he carried burdens heavier than any saddlebag. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Name is Cole Bridger. I heard in town you board horses and treat them right. I need someone to care for my stallion for about a month, maybe a bit longer." Sarah studied the magnificent animal, noting the quality of his conformation, the alert ears, the way he stood despite what must have been a long journey. "That is one fine horse, Mr. Bridger. What breed is he?" "His name is Thunder. He has got Andalusian and Mustang blood, bred him myself from a Spanish mare and the best wild stallion I ever saw. He is 3 years old, just finished his training." Cole ran a hand along the stallion's neck with obvious affection. "He is worth about $800 to the right buyer, but I would not sell him for twice that. He is the best horse I have ever owned. $800. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. That was more than most cowboys made in 2 years. "Why not take him with you wherever you are going?" Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I have business up north that is going to be dangerous and fast. I need to ride light and hard, and I cannot risk anything happening to him. The livery in town, they will feed him, but they would not work him proper or care about his training. You come recommended as someone who understands good horses and needs the money enough to do right by them." Sarah bristled slightly at the assessment of her financial situation, accurate though it was. "I charge 50 cents a day for boarding, feed, and exercise. That includes basic training maintenance. If you want specialized work, it is more." "I will pay you $1 a day," Cole said. "But I need your word you will treat him like he is your own. He is used to being worked every day, needs a firm hand but a gentle one. He has got spirit that should not be broken, just channeled, and he is particular about who he trusts." Sarah looked at the stallion again, seeing the intelligence in his dark eyes. Thunder looked back at her with an assessing gaze that felt almost human. She stepped closer slowly, extending her hand for him to smell. The stallion's nostrils flared, and for a moment she thought he might shy away, but instead he stretched his neck forward and blew softly against her palm. "He likes you," Cole said, and there was surprise in his voice. "He does not usually take to strangers so quick." "Horses know when someone understands them," Sarah said softly, running her hand up Thunder's face to his forehead. The stallion leaned into her touch slightly. "I will take him, Mr. Bridger. You have my word I will care for him as if he were the finest horse in the territory, because he clearly is." Cole's shoulders relaxed slightly, and Sarah realized just how worried he had been about leaving his horse. "I am obliged, Mrs. McKenzie. I heard you were a widow woman, and I am sorry for your loss. 3 years passed," Sarah said. "I have made my peace with it." It was not entirely true, but it was what she told people. She gestured toward the barn. "Let me show you where he will stay, and you can tell me his routine and any particular needs." They walked together toward the barn, Thunder following on a loose lead with his ears pricked forward, taking in his new surroundings. Sarah's other horses nickered from their stalls, curious about the newcomer. She had 2 mares boarding for a mine owner, a gelding recovering from a stone bruise, and her own 3 horses, including her late husband's roan mare that she could never bring herself to sell. "I have the end stall available," Sarah said, leading them to a spacious box stall with fresh straw and good ventilation. "He will have the paddock to himself during the day if you want, or I can turn him out with the mares. How does he do with other horses?" "He is fine with mares, but do not put him with another stallion or a pushy gelding. He will fight if challenged." Cole led Thunder into the stall and removed his halter, running his hands over the horse one more time. "He gets grain twice a day, morning and evening, and good hay throughout. He is used to being ridden or worked on a lunge line every day, needs the exercise to keep his mind settled. He knows basic commands in English and Spanish, responds better to leg pressure than harsh bits." Sarah nodded, committing everything to memory. "How long has it been since he was shod?" "About 3 weeks, should be good for another 3 or 4. Cole pulled a leather pouch from inside his duster. "Here is $45, should cover a month and a half if I am delayed. If I am not back by then, there is a lawyer in Tombstone, Daniel Hawthorne, who has instructions to send you more money and handle Thunder's care if something happens to me." The words hung in the air between them, the unspoken acknowledgement that Cole was riding towards something that might get him killed. Sarah took the money, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. She felt a spark of something she had not experienced since Thomas died, an awareness of a man not just as a customer, but as someone who stirred something in her chest. "I will take good care of him," she said quietly. "But you come back for him yourself, Mr. Bridger. It would be a shame for a horse like this to lose the man who understands him." Cole met her eyes and something passed between them, a connection that felt both unexpected and inevitable. "I plan to, ma'am, I surely do." He settled his hat back on his head and turned to leave, then paused at the stall door. "Mrs. McKenzie, when I get back, might I call on you properly? Take you to dinner in town, perhaps?" Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks, surprised by the directness of the question and by how much she wanted to say yes. "I think I would like that, Mr. Bridger. You come back safe, and we will see about that dinner." A smile transformed his face, softening the hard edges and making him look younger. "Then I have got 2 good reasons to make sure I come back." He touched the brim of his hat to her and walked out of the barn, mounted his own horse, a sturdy bay gelding, and rode back toward town without looking back. Sarah stood in the barn doorway watching until he disappeared, then turned to find Thunder watching her over his stall door. "Well," she said to the stallion, "I guess it is just you and me for a while. Let us see if we can be friends." The days that followed fell into a rhythm that Sarah found herself enjoying more than she expected. Thunder was everything Cole had promised and more. The stallion was intelligent, responsive, and had a personality that reminded her of Cole himself, proud but not mean, spirited but willing to work with someone who treated him with respect. She started each morning by feeding all the horses, then spent an hour working Thunder either under saddle or on the lunge line. The stallion had beautiful gaits, a floating trot, and a rocking horse canter that made riding him feel like dancing. He was sensitive to her cues, requiring only the slightest pressure to respond, and she found herself talking to him as she worked, telling him things she had not spoken aloud to anyone since Thomas died. "You know, your owner is a handsome man," she told Thunder one morning as she brushed him after a ride. "Not that I should be thinking about such things. It has only been 3 years, but some folks would say that is long enough to mourn. My mother-in-law certainly thinks so. She keeps trying to introduce me to eligible men from her church, but they all look at me like I am peculiar for running this place myself." Thunder turned his head to lip at her shirt sleeve, and Sarah laughed. "You think I am peculiar too? Well, at least you are honest about it." The work was hard but satisfying. In addition to exercising Thunder, she had the other horses to care for, stalls to muck, fences to check and mend, hay to put up in her small barn loft. The mine owner came to check on his mares and paid her for another month, clearly pleased with their condition. A rancher from out near Benson brought her a young gelding that needed basic training, offering her $50 if she could have him ready to work cattle in 6 weeks. The money helped, but it was Thunder who filled something in her that had been empty. The magnificent stallion gave her someone to focus on beyond just survival, a challenge that engaged her skills and reminded her why she had fallen in love with horses in the first place. Each small breakthrough in their training, each moment when Thunder responded perfectly to her cues, felt like a triumph. By the end of the first week, Thunder would nicker when he saw her coming. By the end of the second, he would follow her around his paddock without a lead rope, his dark nose bumping her shoulder when he wanted attention. At night, she found herself standing by his stall, one hand on his neck, wondering where Cole was and whether he was safe. She had not expected to think about Cole Bridger so much. He had been there for perhaps an hour, yet his presence lingered. She remembered the careful way he touched his horse, the vulnerability in his eyes when he talked about the danger ahead, the directness of his request to call on her. It had been so long since a man looked at her that way, with interest and respect rather than pity or speculation about her property. 3 weeks into Cole's absence, trouble arrived in the form of Marcus Hastings, the youngest son of the cattle baron whose ranch bordered her property to the east. Marcus was 23, handsome in a clean-cut way that reminded Sarah of the illustrations in Eastern magazines, and absolutely certain of his own charm and importance. He had been sniffing around her property ever since Thomas died, alternating between offers to buy her out and awkward attempts at courting that ignored every polite refusal she gave him. He rode up one afternoon while Sarah was working Thunder in the round pen, his fine palomino gelding prancing and tossing its head. Sarah suppressed a sigh and brought Thunder to a halt, stepping to the center of the pen to meet her unwelcome visitor's eyes. "Afternoon, Mrs. McKenzie," Marcus called, leaning on his saddle horn with a smile that probably worked on the saloon girls in town. "That is a fine-looking stallion, new acquisition, boarding him," Sarah said shortly. "What can I do for you, Mr. Hastings?" "I was hoping we could talk about my father's offer on your property. He has authorized me to go as high as $3,000, which is more than fair for 40 acres with limited water and rundown buildings." Sarah felt her temper spike. Her buildings were not run down, she maintained them herself with care and limited resources. "As I have told you and your father multiple times, my property is not for sale at any price. Now if you will excuse me, I have work to do." Marcus's smile faltered. "Sarah, be reasonable. A woman alone cannot run a place like this forever. You need a man to take care of you, to give you security." He dismounted and walked toward the fence. "I could be that man. Marry me, and you would not have to work yourself to the bone anymore. You could have a proper house, servants, everything a lady deserves. I am not a lady, Mr. Hastings. I am a rancher, and I have no interest in being taken care of or in selling my property to be swallowed up by your father's empire." Sarah kept her voice level with effort. Please leave." Thunder, sensing her tension, tossed his head and snorted, moving closer to Sarah with his ears pinned slightly back. Marcus eyed the stallion warily. "That horse seems mean-tempered. You should be careful handling an animal like that. Stallions can be dangerous for a woman alone." "Thunder is a perfect gentleman, which is more than I can say for some people." Sarah moved toward the gate. "Goodbye, Mr. Hastings." Marcus's face reddened. "You are making a mistake, Sarah. My father is not going to wait forever, and there are ways to make life difficult for people who do not cooperate. Your water rights, for instance, depend on maintaining certain property conditions. If someone were to report violations to the territorial authorities." The threat was barely veiled, and Sarah felt cold despite the afternoon heat. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Hastings? I am trying to help you see reason." Marcus mounted his horse again, his expression hard. "Think about my offer. You have until the end of the month to give me an answer, one way or another." He rode off without waiting for a response, leaving Sarah standing in the round pen with her heart pounding. Thunder moved up beside her and pressed his head against her shoulder, and Sarah wrapped an arm around his neck, taking comfort in his solid presence. "Your owner better come back soon," she whispered. "I could use someone on my side right about now." But the days continued to pass with no sign of Cole. Sarah threw herself into work, trying not to worry about either the man or the threats from the Hastings family. She rode Thunder out into the desert in the early mornings when the air was still cool, letting the stallion stretch his legs in long gallops that left them both breathing hard and alive. Those rides became her favorite part of the day, just her and the magnificent horse moving together across the stark beauty of the Arizona landscape. It was on one of those rides, 4 weeks into Cole's absence, that Thunder suddenly threw his head up and whinnied, a loud trumpeting call that echoed across the canyon they were traversing. Sarah looked around quickly, hand dropping to the rifle in her saddle's scabbard, but saw nothing threatening. Then Thunder called again, and in the distance, she heard an answering whinny. Her heart began to pound as she urged Thunder up the trail toward her ranch. The stallion needed no encouragement, breaking into a canter that Sarah had to check with gentle pressure on the reins. As they crested the rise that looked down on her property, she saw a rider dismounting near her barn, a tall figure in a black hat leading a tired-looking bay gelding. Cole had come back. Sarah felt something burst open in her chest, a joy so intense it nearly frightened her. She had told herself not to get attached, not to build dreams around a man she barely knew, but seeing him standing there safe and whole made her realize she had failed completely. Thunder was dancing beneath her, eager to reach his owner, and Sarah loosened the reins to let the stallion trot down the slope toward home. Cole turned at the sound of hoofbeats, and even from a distance, Sarah could see his face light up. He dropped his own horse's reins and walked forward to meet them, and Thunder nearly dragged Sarah the last few yards in his eagerness. The stallion pushed his nose into Cole's chest, blowing and nickering, and Cole wrapped his arms around the horse's head with his eyes closed. "Hey, boy," he said softly. "I missed you too. Did you take good care of the lady for me?" Sarah dismounted, suddenly shy now that Cole was actually here. He looked thinner than she remembered, with new lines around his eyes and a healing cut along one cheekbone. His clothes were dusty and worn, and he moved with the stiffness of someone who had spent too many hours in the saddle recently. "He took excellent care of me," Sarah said, "and I tried to do the same for him. He is a remarkable horse, Mr. Bridger." Cole looked up at her, still holding Thunder's head against his chest. "Please call me Cole, and I can see you did more than just care for him. He looks fantastic, and the way he moves with you, I could see the trust between you from here. I cannot thank you enough." "It was my pleasure, truly." Sarah stroked Thunder's neck. "I have grown rather fond of him. It is going to be quiet around here when you take him home." "About that," Cole said, and something in his tone made Sarah look at him sharply. "I do not have a home to take him to anymore. The business I went north for, it involved my ranch in Colorado. I had to sell it to cover debts my former partner ran up before he disappeared with most of our breeding stock. I got enough to pay off the creditors and have a little left over, but not enough to start over up there. I was thinking maybe I would try my luck down here in the territory. Sarah's mind raced. I am sorry about your ranch, that must have been terrible. It was not the life I wanted anyway, to tell the truth. The ranch was my father's dream, and I kept it going after he died because it seemed like the right thing to do, but this country down here, it suits me better. He paused. And there is a woman here I have been thinking about every day for the past month, wondering if she might still be willing to have dinner with me. Heat flooded Sarah's face. I think that could be arranged. Thunder butted his head against Cole's shoulder impatiently, breaking the tension, and they both laughed. Let me get you both settled, Sarah said. Your gelding looks like he could use a good meal and a rest. That makes two of us, Cole admitted. Is there a boarding house in town you would recommend? I need a place to stay until I figure out my next move. The words were out of Sarah's mouth before she could second-guess them. You could stay here. I have a spare room in the house, nothing fancy, but it is clean and the price is reasonable. And you would be close to Thunder. Cole studied her for a long moment. Are you sure? I do not want to compromise your reputation. Sarah laughed, a sound with an edge to it. My reputation is already compromised by running this place myself and wearing trousers. The gossips will talk regardless of what I do. Besides, I could use someone around who knows horses and can help with the heavy work. Consider it a business arrangement. She could see Cole weighing the offer, propriety against practicality and his own obvious desire to accept. Finally, he nodded. All right, but only if you let me earn my keep. I am good with carpentry and ranch work, and I can help train your other horses. We will call it a trade, room and board for labor. Deal. Sarah extended her hand, and Cole shook it, his grip warm and calloused and sending tingles up her arm. Now, let us get these horses taken care of before they decide to handle negotiations themselves. They worked together in comfortable silence, settling Thunder back into his stall where he immediately began munching hay as if he had never left. Cole's bay gelding, whose name was Dusty, got the stall next door and a double helping of grain that he attacked with weary enthusiasm. Cole moved with practiced efficiency, clearly exhausted but unwilling to let Sarah do all the work. When the horses were cared for, Sarah led Cole into the small house she had shared with Thomas and tried to see it through a stranger's eyes. The front room held a worn sofa and chair, a wood stove for heat, and shelves lined with Thomas's collection of books about horses and ranching. The kitchen was tiny but functional, and there were two bedrooms barely large enough for their single beds and a dresser each. The spare room is through there, Sarah said, pointing. It is not much, but the mattress is decent and there are clean linens. The bathing room is out back, just a pump and tub in a shed, but the water is good. I will heat some for you if you want to wash up before supper. Cole set his saddlebags down carefully. You do not have to go to any trouble. It is no trouble. You look like you have been through hell, and I imagine you have stories to tell when you are ready. Sarah moved toward the kitchen. I was planning on making stew, nothing fancy, but there is plenty. That sounds like heaven. Cole pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. Sarah, I want to be straight with you about something. When I asked if I could call on you, I meant it. This past month, thinking about coming back here to you and Thunder, it is what kept me going through some rough times, but I am not a man with many prospects right now. I have got about $300 to my name, no land and no clear path forward. If you want me to keep things purely professional between us, I will understand. Sarah turned to face him fully. Cole Bridger, I have been a widow running a struggling horse ranch for 3 years. I have got 40 acres, a mortgage, and a powerful family trying to force me out. I am not exactly a great catch myself, but I have not been able to stop thinking about you either, and I think maybe we could figure out our futures together better than either of us could alone. So let us have that dinner, here or in town, and see where things go. The smile that spread across Cole's face was like sunrise. I would like that very much. Over the next few days, they fell into a partnership that felt natural and right. Cole proved to be as skilled as he had claimed, fixing the sagging fence in the far paddock, rehanging the barn door that had been dragging, and working with Sarah on the young gelding she was training for the rancher. He had a gift with horses that matched her own, firm but patient, and she loved watching him work. They talked while they labored, sharing stories of their pasts. Cole told her about growing up on his father's ranch in Colorado, learning to break horses almost before he could read. He had inherited the place at 22 when his father died of pneumonia, spent 5 years trying to build it into something profitable with a partner he thought was a friend, only to discover the man had been embezzling and had finally run off with their best horses and most of their cash. I thought about tracking him down, Cole admitted one evening as they sat on Sarah's porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. But I realized I would be chasing revenge instead of building something new. So I paid off what he owed, sold the land, and came south looking for a fresh start. Sarah understood that impulse perfectly. She told him about her marriage to Thomas, how they had met when she was 19 and he was 23, both of them working for a large horse ranch outside of Tucson. They had saved every penny for 3 years to buy this small place, dreaming of building something together. His death had shattered those dreams, but she had discovered a strength in herself she had not known existed. Sometimes I feel guilty, she confessed. For being happy to be on my own, for not missing him every moment the way a proper widow should. We loved each other, but it was a comfortable kind of love, not the passionate kind you read about in books. Cole reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I think there is more than one way to love someone, and none of them are wrong. Thomas was lucky to have you, and I think he would be proud of what you have done with this place. The simple acceptance in his words made Sarah's throat tight. She squeezed his hand and let herself lean against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him and the rightness of being close. They had their dinner in town 2 weeks after Cole's return at the nicest restaurant Tombstone had to offer, which was not saying much but still felt special. Sarah wore her one good dress, a dark blue cotton that had been her Sunday best, and Cole borrowed a clean shirt from the general store owner and looked devastatingly handsome. Over steaks and potatoes, they talked about everything and nothing, discovering shared opinions on everything from the best way to train a cutting horse to their favorite books. I want to kiss you, Cole said as they walked back toward where they had left the wagon under a street lamp's glow. I have wanted to since that first morning when you put your hand on Thunder's face and he trusted you immediately, but I do not want to rush you or presume anything. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. I want you to kiss me too. I have been thinking about it rather constantly if I am being honest. Cole's eyes darkened, and he cupped her face gently in both hands. You are so beautiful, he whispered. Strong and capable and beautiful, and I am falling in love with you, Sarah McKenzie. Then his lips were on hers, soft and careful at first, then deeper as Sarah responded, her hands gripping the front of his shirt to pull him closer. She had kissed Thomas hundreds of times, but this was different, electric and consuming and awakening something in her that had been dormant for years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sarah felt tears on her cheeks, though she could not have said whether they were from joy or the intensity of feeling things she had thought were behind her. I am falling in love with you too, she said against his mouth. It terrifies me, but I am. Cole kissed her again, slower this time, tender and full of promise. We will figure it out, he murmured, together. But the universe seemed determined to test them. The next afternoon, Marcus Hastings returned with his father, Edmund Hastings, a silver-haired man in his 60s who radiated power and entitlement. They arrived in a fine buggy driven by one of their ranch hands, and Sarah felt her stomach sink as she watched them approach. Cole emerged from the barn where he had been cleaning stalls and came to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. Edmund's eyes flicked over Cole with obvious assessment, taking in the work-worn clothes and capable stance. "Mrs. McKenzie," Edmund said without dismounting from the buggy, "I see you have hired help. That is good. You will need strong backs for the move. My son tells me you have until the end of the month to accept our offer, but I am a generous man. I will give you until the end of the week to clear out. 3,200 final offer." Sarah lifted her chin. "Mr. Hastings, my property is not for sale. Not this week, not this month, not ever. I have made that clear to your son multiple times." Edmund's expression hardened. "Young lady, you are being foolish. The Territorial Water Board has scheduled an inspection of all ranches in this county for next week. I have it on good authority that your operation has several violations that could result in your water rights being revoked. No water rights, no ranch. Save yourself the embarrassment and sell now while my offer stands." Cole's hand found Sarah's, squeezing gently. "Sir, I am not sure what you think you know, but Mrs. McKenzie's operation is in full compliance with territorial regulations. Her water comes from a legal well, her livestock numbers are within limits for her acreage, and her facilities are well maintained. Any inspection will show that clearly." "And who are you to speak for Mrs. McKenzie?" Marcus snapped from his seat beside his father. "I am Cole Bridger, her business partner. We are consolidating our operations to expand the horse training side of the ranch." Cole's voice was calm but had an edge of steel. "Now I suggest you gentlemen move along before this becomes unpleasant." Edmund's face reddened. "Partner, how convenient." "Be careful, Mrs. McKenzie. Drifters are not known for their staying power. When he moves on, you will wish you had taken my offer." He signaled the driver to turn the buggy around. "You have until Friday." They drove off in a cloud of dust, leaving Sarah shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. "They are going to make trouble," she said quietly. "Edmund Hastings has connections with every territorial official from here to Phoenix. If he wants to find violations, he will invent them. Then we will fight him." Cole turned her to face him. "Sarah, I meant what I said about being partners. I do not have much capital, but I can put my $300 toward hiring a lawyer if we need one, and I have got a strong back and skills that are worth something. Let me help you fight this." Sarah looked up at him, seeing the determination in his eyes. "You barely know me." "Why would you risk your money and your future on this?" "Because I love you," Cole said simply. "And because I am tired of running from fights. I ran from Colorado instead of facing what my partner did. I am not running anymore. This is where I want to be with you, building something together. If you will have me." Sarah threw her arms around his neck, holding him tight. "Yes, yes, I will have you. We will fight them together." The next few days were a flurry of activity. Cole rode into Tombstone and hired Daniel Hawthorne, the lawyer he had mentioned on his first visit, to research Sarah's property rights and prepare for the water board inspection. The attorney, a sharp-eyed man in his 40s, assured them that Sarah's operation was legally sound and that Edmund Hastings would have a hard time proving otherwise. Meanwhile, Sarah and Cole worked to make sure every aspect of the ranch was in perfect order. They repaired the water trough, cleared the irrigation ditches, organized the barn from top to bottom, and documented every horse on the property with detailed records of ownership and boarding agreements. They worked from dawn until well after dark, collapsing into their separate beds each night too exhausted for more than a brief goodnight kiss at Sarah's bedroom door. Thunder seemed to sense the tension, becoming protective of both Sarah and Cole, pinning his ears whenever a stranger approached the property. The stallion's presence was oddly comforting, his strength and beauty a reminder of what they were fighting to protect. The territorial inspector arrived on Thursday morning, a thin bureaucrat named Howard Pine who looked like he had never sat a horse in his life. He was accompanied by Marcus Hastings, which immediately raised Sarah's hackles. "Mr. Pine, why is Mr. Hastings accompanying you?" Sarah asked as she met them at the gate. Pine cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Hastings filed the complaint that triggered this inspection. It is standard procedure to allow the complainant to be present." "How convenient," Cole muttered beside her. Daniel Hawthorne had arrived earlier and stepped forward now, all professional courtesy. "Mr. Pine, I am Daniel Hawthorne, representing Mrs. McKenzie and Mr. Bridger. I trust you will be conducting a thorough and impartial inspection based on the actual territorial regulations and not on unsubstantiated accusations." Pine looked even more uncomfortable. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. I am simply here to verify compliance with water use regulations, animal welfare standards, and property maintenance requirements." The inspection lasted 3 hours. Pine examined Sarah's well, measured her water usage, counted her horses, checked her fencing and buildings, and reviewed all her documentation. Through it all, Marcus followed along with a smug expression that Sarah longed to wipe away. Cole stayed at her side, answering questions when needed but mostly providing silent support with his presence. Finally, Pine returned to his buggy and made notes in his official ledger. Sarah's heart pounded as she waited for his verdict, Cole's hand warm around hers. "Mrs. McKenzie," Pine said formally, "I find your operation to be in full compliance with all territorial regulations regarding water rights, animal welfare, and property standards. Your water usage is well within your legal allocation, your facilities are adequately maintained, and your animals are properly cared for. I will be filing a report to that effect with the Territorial Board." Sarah felt dizzy with relief. Beside her, Cole squeezed her hand hard enough to hurt. Marcus stepped forward, his face red. "That is impossible. This place barely meets minimum standards. The barn is falling apart, the fences are a disgrace." "Mr. Hastings, I have conducted inspections on dozens of properties across this territory, including your family's ranch," Pine said with obvious irritation. "Mrs. McKenzie's operation, while modest, is better maintained than many I have seen. There are no grounds for revoking her water rights or any other punitive action. Good day." He climbed into his buggy and drove off, leaving Marcus standing in the yard looking furious. "This is not over," Marcus said, turning on Sarah. "My father always gets what he wants." "Your father is going to have to learn to accept disappointment," Cole said quietly, but there was warning in his voice. "Now get off this property before I make you leave." Marcus glared at them both, then mounted his horse and rode off. As soon as he was out of sight, Sarah collapsed against Cole, her legs suddenly weak. He caught her easily, holding her up. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "You did it," Cole corrected. "You kept this place running and legal despite everything." "I just stood next to you looking tough," Sarah laughed, slightly hysterical with relief. "You are very good at looking tough." Daniel Hawthorne was smiling when they turned back to him. "That was exactly the outcome we hoped for. Pine is a stickler for regulations, which worked in your favor. But I would not be surprised if the Hastings family tries something else. Men like Edmund do not give up easily." "Let them try," Sarah said, feeling fierce now that the immediate crisis had passed. "This is my land, my home, and I am not leaving." After the lawyer left, Cole pulled Sarah into his arms right there in the yard and kissed her thoroughly. "I am so proud of you," he said against her mouth. "You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met." "We make a good team," Sarah replied, smiling up at him. "Partners." "Partners?" Cole agreed. Then his expression became serious. "Sarah, I want to make this official. I want to invest my money in this ranch, become a real partner in the business. We can expand the training operation, maybe buy some brood mares and start breeding quality horses. With Thunder as our foundation stallion and your skills as a trainer, we could build something really special." Sarah's mind raced. It was a huge step, mixing business and their growing personal relationship, but it also felt absolutely right. What about us? "The personal us, not just the business partnership," Cole smiled, that slow, warm smile that made her heart flip. "I think we should take that one day at a time. I do not want to rush you, but I also do not want to pretend I am not completely in love with you. We can be partners in business and see where the romance goes, no pressure." "I love you too," Sarah said, the words coming easier each time. "And yes, let us be partners, real partners in everything." They shook hands solemnly, then broke into laughter and kissed again. From his paddock, thunder whinnied loudly as if approving their decision. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity and happiness. Cole invested his money in purchasing lumber and materials to expand the barn, adding 4 new stalls and a proper tack room. They bought 3 young mares at auction, good stock that could be trained and eventually bred to Thunder. Word spread that the McKenzie Ranch, now called McKenzie Bridger Horse Ranch, was under new expanded management, and business began to pick up. Cole moved his belongings from the spare room into Sarah's room one night in early October without discussion. They had been dancing around it for weeks, growing closer every day, and it simply felt natural to sleep in each other's arms. Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, a revelation for Sarah, who had only known the comfortable but unexciting physical relationship she had shared with Thomas. Cole was attentive and patient, learning her body as carefully as he learned horses, and Sarah discovered depths of pleasure and connection she had not known existed. They worked side by side every day, training horses, mending fences, doing all the 1,000 tasks required to keep a ranch running. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch with coffee or whiskey, planning their future. Cole wanted to eventually breed Thunder to their best mares, creating a line of horses known for intelligence and athleticism. Sarah wanted to develop a reputation as the best horse trainer in southern Arizona, the person wealthy ranchers and miners came to when they needed a problem horse fixed or a young horse properly started. The Hastings family made one more attempt at causing trouble in November. A fire broke out in Sarah's hay barn late one night, and only quick action by Cole, who had been unable to sleep and was sitting outside, kept it from spreading to the main barn and the horses. They found evidence that the fire had been deliberately set, kerosene splashed on the hay bales, but could not prove who was responsible. Sheriff John Behan, known to be friendly with the Hastings family, barely investigated. "We need to be more careful," Cole said as they stood looking at the burned-out shell of the hay barn. "Next time they might go after the horses directly." They installed locks on all the barn doors and took turns checking the property throughout the night. Cole also made discreet inquiries and learned that Marcus Hastings had been seen in a saloon the night of the fire, very publicly establishing an alibi which suggested he had hired someone to do the actual deed. It was frustrating but not surprising. Despite the continued harassment, their lives settled into something that felt like happiness. Sarah found herself smiling for no reason, singing while she worked, looking forward to each day in a way she had not since Thomas died. Cole seemed lighter too, the haunted look that had been in his eyes when he first arrived fading as he rebuilt his life. They were married in January of 1883 by a circuit judge who came through Tombstone. It was a simple ceremony in the lawyer Daniel Hawthorne's office, with Daniel and his wife serving as witnesses. Sarah wore her blue dress again, and Cole bought a new shirt for the occasion. Afterward, they had dinner at the same restaurant where they had shared their first official date, and then went home to their ranch and their horses and their life together. Their wedding night was tender and joyful, a celebration of the commitment they were making to each other. Cole carried Sarah over the threshold of the house that was now legally theirs together, and they made love slowly, learning each other all over again with the knowledge that this was forever. "I never thought I could be this happy," Sarah whispered afterward, her head on Cole's chest as he ran his fingers through her hair. "After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over." "I am glad you were wrong," Cole said, kissing her forehead. "And I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret taking a chance on a drifter cowboy with nothing but a horse and a dream." "You brought me more than that," Sarah said. "You brought me a partner, a future, and a love I did not think I would find. That is everything." The ranch continued to grow over the following years. Their reputation spread, and they began receiving horses to train from as far away as Phoenix and Tucson. Thunder sired his first foals in the spring of 1884, and the 3 colts and 2 fillies were everything they had hoped for, strong and intelligent with their father's beauty and spirit. Marcus Hastings made one final attempt to cause trouble in the summer of 1884, spreading rumors that Sarah and Cole were operating their business illegally, and that Cole was actually a wanted criminal from Colorado. A deputy marshal came to investigate and quickly determined that the accusations were baseless lies. The marshal, not amused at having his time wasted, apparently had stern words with the Hastings family about filing false reports. After that, the harassment stopped, and they were finally left in peace. Sarah discovered she was pregnant in the autumn of 1884. She had hoped for children but had begun to wonder if it would happen, so the news filled them both with joy and not a small amount of terror. Cole became even more protective, insisting Sarah rest more and do less of the heavy work. Sarah tolerated his hovering because she knew it came from love, but she continued to train horses and run the ranch right up until her body made it too difficult. Their son was born in May of 1885, a healthy boy with Cole's dark hair and Sarah's green eyes. They named him Thomas Cole Bridger, honoring Sarah's late husband while looking toward their future. Cole was a devoted father from the first moment, walking the floor with the baby when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, and looking at his son with such love that Sarah fell in love with her husband all over again. They hired a young man named Jimmy Peterson to help with the ranch work so Sarah could take time to care for the baby. Jimmy was 19, eager to learn and good with horses. He lived in the old spare room and became almost like family, eating meals with them and learning the business from the ground up. Thunder remained the center of their breeding program, siring foal crops every year that consistently demonstrated his quality. By 1887, McKenzie Bridger horses were known throughout the territory, and they were able to command premium prices for their trained horses and young stock. The mortgage was paid off, the buildings were all in excellent repair, and they had money in the bank for the first time in either of their lives. Sarah was pregnant again in early 1888, and this time a daughter was born in October, a tiny perfect girl they named Emma Jane after both their mothers. Thomas was 3 years old by then, already showing an affinity for horses that delighted Cole. The boy would spend hours in the barn, talking to the horses and imitating his parents' training techniques. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that made water scarce, winters that were harder than expected, horses that got sick or injured despite their best care. Edmund Hastings died in 1889, and while Marcus inherited the family ranch, he seemed to lose interest in harassing them, perhaps realizing that his father's vendetta had been pointless. Cole and Sarah worked side by side through everything, their partnership deepening with each year. They still made time for each other despite the demands of the ranch and their growing children, stealing kisses in the barn, making love in the afternoon when the children napped, sitting together on the porch in the evenings talking about their dreams and plans. Thunder remained vigorous and healthy well into his teens, still siring quality foals and serving as the foundation of their breeding program. Cole took the Stallion out for rides regularly, and sometimes Sarah would join him, the two of them racing across the desert the way she and Thunder had done during that month they spent getting to know each other. Those rides always reminded Sarah of how everything had begun, with a cowboy trusting her with his most precious possession, and coming back to find both his horse and his future waiting for him. In 1892, when Thomas was 7 and Emma was 4, Sarah gave birth to twins, a boy and girl they named Michael and Grace. Cole joked that they were trying to populate the territory single-handedly, but Sarah could see how much he loved being a father, how he thrived on the chaos and joy of their large family. The children grew up around horses, learning to ride almost before they could walk. Thomas showed signs of having his father's gift with training, while Emma seemed more interested in the business side, always asking questions about prices and profits. Michael and Grace were still young, but both loved being in the barn and helping with the easier chores. As Arizona moved toward statehood, the ranch continued to prosper. They expanded again, buying an adjacent 40 acres when it came up for sale, and built a proper ranch house to replace the small cabin that had served them for so many years. The new house had 4 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a parlor, and even indoor plumbing, a luxury that still amazed Sarah every time she used it. Thunder sired his last foal crop in 1896 at the age of 17. Cole made the decision to retire the stallion from breeding, wanting him to enjoy his final years without the stress of the breeding season. The old horse had earned his rest, having founded a line of quality horses that bore the McKenzie Bridger name across the territory and beyond. Sarah was 40 years old that year, and Cole was 43. They had been together for 14 years, married for 13, and it felt like both a lifetime and no time at all. Their children were healthy and happy. Their ranch was successful beyond their early dreams, and they were still as much in love as they had been that first day when Thunder had brought them together. One evening in the autumn of 1896, they sat on the porch of their new house watching Thunder in his paddock. The stallion was gray around his muzzle now, moving with the stiffness of age, but still magnificent in his way. Thomas was practicing his roping in the yard, Emma was inside reading to the twins, and Jimmy had long since moved on to start his own place with a wife and children of his own. "You ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Sarah asked, leaning against Cole's shoulder. "If you had not needed someone to care for Thunder, if you had chosen a different ranch or decided to keep him with you?" Cole wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I think about it sometimes. And then I thank God or fate or whatever force in the universe brought me to your gate that morning. You and Thunder were the best things that ever happened to me." "He is getting old," Sarah said softly, voicing the fear they both had. "We probably only have a few more years with him." "I know. But look at what he gave us. Without Thunder, I might never have had the courage to ask if I could call on you. He brought us together, and the life we built from that moment has been more than I ever dreamed possible." Sarah turned to kiss her husband, this man who had ridden into her life with a magnificent horse and a heart full of hope. "I love you, Cole Bridger. Every single day I love you more. And I love you, Sarah Bridger. Always." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in the same shades of orange and gold as that first evening so many years ago. In his paddock, Thunder raised his head and whinnied, a sound of contentment and peace. Thunder lived for 3 more years, passing quietly in his sleep in the spring of 1899 at the age of 20. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a marker carved from local stone that reads simply, "Thunder, Foundation Stallion, born 1879, died 1899, he brought us together." All 4 children helped dig the grave, even the twins who were only 7, because Thunder had been part of their family and deserved to be honored. Cole grieved hard for his old friend, but Sarah noticed that he also seemed at peace. Thunder had lived a long, good life, had been loved and valued, and had left behind a legacy in the horses that bore his bloodlines. It was more than most horses ever received. The new century dawned with Arizona on the cusp of major changes. The wild frontier was becoming more settled, towns were growing, and the territory was pushing toward statehood. McKenzie Bridger Ranch adapted with the times, focusing more on quality breeding stock and specialized training rather than the rough-and-ready horse trading of the early days. Thomas took over more of the training work as he grew into his teens, showing a talent that rivaled both his parents. Emma proved to have a head for business, negotiating sales and keeping the ranch's books with meticulous care. Michael and Grace were still finding their way, but both clearly loved the ranch life and seemed likely to stay and contribute to the family business. Sarah's hair began to show threads of silver, and Cole's was more gray than dark now, but they still worked side by side every day, still stole moments alone when they could, still fell into bed together each night grateful for another day together. The passion had mellowed into something deeper and more sustaining, a love built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and years of partnership through good times and bad. In 1902, Marcus Hastings approached them at a horse auction in Tucson. He was in his early 40s now, looking tired and worn despite his expensive clothes. His father's ranch had struggled without Edmund's ruthless drive, and rumor had it that Marcus was considering selling. "Mr. and Mrs. Bridger," he said formally. "I wanted to apologize for my behavior all those years ago. My father taught me to see the world as something to be conquered, and it took me a long time to realize that approach just made everyone miserable, including me. You were right to stand your ground, and I am sorry for the trouble I caused." Sarah and Cole exchanged glances, communicating silently the way long-married couples could. "We appreciate that, Mr. Hastings," Cole said finally. "It takes courage to admit when you were wrong." Marcus nodded, looking relieved. "I am selling the ranch and moving east. There are new opportunities in manufacturing and industry that interest me more than cattle ranching, but I wanted to make peace before I left. You have built something admirable here, and I am sorry I tried to destroy it." After he left, Sarah took Cole's hand. "Well, that was unexpected." "People can change," Cole said. "I suppose even Marcus Hastings deserved a chance to grow up." "I am glad we stood our ground," Sarah said. "I am glad we fought for this place and for us." "So am I," Cole said, kissing her temple. "Every single day I am grateful we fought for us." Thomas married at 22, a sweet young woman named Catherine who loved horses almost as much as he did. They built a house on the far side of the ranch property and began raising their own family, giving Sarah and Cole their first grandchildren in 1904, twin boys that Cole declared were divine retribution for all the trouble Thomas had caused as a child. Emma married at 21, to a lawyer from Tucson who did not know anything about horses but was willing to learn. They lived in town but visited often, and Emma continued to handle much of the ranch's legal and business affairs. Michael and Grace remained at home well into their 20s, both focused on the ranch and showing no interest in marrying. Michael took over the breeding program, carefully selecting mares and managing the complicated genetics that kept their horses at the top of the market. Grace became their primary dealer, traveling to auctions and ranches across the Southwest to buy and sell horses, with a gift for negotiation that made even hardened horse traders respect her. Arizona achieved statehood in 1912, and the Bridger family celebrated along with the rest of the territory. Sarah was 54 that year, Cole was 57, and they had been married for 29 years. Their children were all settled in their lives, their grandchildren numbered 6 with more likely on the way, and their ranch was one of the most respected horse operations in the new state. They stood together on their porch that February evening when the statehood news arrived, looking out over the land they had fought for and built together. The old barn where Thunder had stayed was still standing, though it now served as storage rather than housing horses. The paddock where the magnificent Stallion had spent his days was used for young horses getting their first turnout experience. "We have had a good life," Sarah said softly. "Better than I ever imagined. The best life," Cole agreed. "And it all started because I needed someone to care for my horse," Sarah laughed. "You knew what you were doing, bringing that beautiful animal to a lonely widow's ranch." "Maybe a little," Cole admitted, "but I could not have predicted how everything would turn out. How much I would love you, how perfect our life together would be. Thunder brought us together, but you and I built this life with our own hands." "Together," Sarah said, the word that had defined their partnership from the beginning. "Together," Cole echoed, pulling her close and kissing her as the Arizona sun set on their ranch, their family, and the love story that had begun with a cowboy, a woman, and a magnificent stallion who waited home. They continued running the ranch together well into their 60s, though they gradually turned over more responsibility to their children. Thomas took over most of the training, Michael managed the breeding program, and Grace handled the buying and selling. Emma's husband had learned enough about the business to serve as the ranch's legal counsel, keeping them in compliance with the increasingly complex regulations of the modern era. Sarah and Cole spent more time with their grandchildren, teaching them to ride and care for horses the way they had taught their own children. They took long rides together across the desert they both loved, moving slower now but still finding joy in the partnership that had sustained them through decades. One afternoon in the spring of 1918, when Sarah was 60 and Cole was 63, they rode out to Thunder's grave on the hill. The stone marker was weathered now, the carved letters softened by wind and rain but still clearly readable. Wildflowers had taken root around the grave, creating a natural memorial that seemed fitting for the horse who had changed their lives. "Do you remember that first morning when you rode up to my place?" Sarah asked, sitting beside Cole on the sun-warmed grass. "I thought you were just another drifter looking for cheap horse board." "I was a drifter," Cole said with a smile. "Just one who got lucky enough to drift into the right place at the right time. We both got lucky." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thunder brought you to me, but we chose to build this life together. Every day, through all the hardships and triumphs, we chose each other." "Best decision I ever made," Cole said, kissing the top of her head. "Marrying you, building this ranch, raising our family. If I died tomorrow, I would have no regrets." "Do not talk about dying," Sarah scolded, but gently. "We still have years ahead of us." They did have years, though not as many as they hoped. Cole passed away in his sleep in 1923 at the age of 68, his heart simply giving out after a long day working with a young horse. Sarah held him as he died, grateful that he went peacefully, doing what he loved. She buried him next to Thunder, with a marker that read Cole Bridger, horseman, father, beloved husband, born 1855, died 1923. He chose love. Sarah lived another 12 years, remaining active in the ranch until her own health began to fail. She passed away in 1935 at the age of 77, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, with great-grandchildren playing in the yard outside. Her last words were reported to be, "Tell Cole I am coming home, and Thunder better be waiting for us both." They buried her on the other side of Cole, so that the three of them rested together on the hill overlooking the ranch they had built. The McKenzie Bridger Ranch continued to operate under the management of their descendants, remaining one of the premier horse breeding and training operations in Arizona well into the 21st century. The story of how the ranch began, with a cowboy who left his prize stallion in a widow's care and came back to find both waiting home, became family legend passed down through generations. It was a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come when you trust someone with what you value most, when you take chances on people who seem like strangers, and when you have the courage to build something new from the ashes of loss. Sarah and Cole's love story was not one of dramatic gestures or grand romance in the traditional sense. It was built on partnership, mutual respect, hard work, and a willingness to face challenges together. It was about two people who found each other when they needed it most and chose every day to continue choosing each other. It was about a magnificent horse who brought them together and gave them the foundation for a legacy that would last for generations. In the end, it was a love story as wild and enduring as the Arizona landscape itself, as strong as the horses they bred, and as true as the bond between two people who found home in each other's arms. When the great-grandchildren of Sarah and Cole Bridger looked up at the hill where three graves rested, they saw more than monuments to the dead. They saw the beginning of everything they had, the foundation of the family and the ranch that bore the McKenzie Bridger name with pride. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blew across the desert, and the horses in the paddocks raised their heads to some call only they could hear, it was easy to imagine that somewhere beyond sight, A magnificent black stallion ran free, while a cowboy and the woman he loved rode together forever, their partnership extending even beyond death into whatever waited on the other side. That was the true ending of their story, not in death, but in the understanding that what they built together would endure as long as there were horses to train, land to work, and people who believed that love, trust, and hard work could build something extraordinary from the simplest of beginnings. A cowboy left his prize stallion in her care for a month. He came back, and both were waiting home. And from that moment, 3 lives became one story, a testament to the transformative power of love and the bonds that connect us all, human and animal alike, across the vast, beautiful wilderness of life.